Synopsis of the books of the Bible by J. N. Darby. Exodus chapters 16 and 17. The difficulties of the way. But now the difficulties of the way arrive. They have traveled 3 days without water, and sad effects it appears of such a deliverance, and then the water is bitter where they find it. If death has delivered them from the power of the enemy, it must become known in its application. I'm sorry, I lost my way here. If death has delivered them from the power of the enemy, it must be known in its application to them. Bitter to the soul in the truth, but through grace, refreshment, and life. For in all these things is the life of the Spirit. It is death and the application of the cross to the flesh, particularly after the deliverance. But the wood, Christ's part on the cross, I doubt not, makes it sweet, and refreshment too. Thereupon we have the 12 wells of the 7 palm trees. See note, type, it seems to me, of those living springs and of the shelter which have been provided through instrumental choices of God for the consolation of his people. Note, the Lord adopts this number in his 2 closing missions of the disciples of Israel. See note. End of note, I'm sorry. The manna and the water from the smitten rock. Here we have the principles of the people, responsibility, and their obedience, put as a condition of the well-being under God's government. Still, however, the part of the history of the Red Sea and Sinai is always grace. The Sabbath, rest of the people, is established in connection with Christ, the true bread of life, who gives it. Then comes the Spirit, living water which comes out of the rock, but the presence of the Holy Ghost comes conflict and not rest. Yet Christ, typified here by Jordan, of whom mention is now made for the first time, places himself spiritually at the head of his people. True rest is by Christ, the bread that came down from heaven, and this comes first before conflict, though men could not really enjoy it by the bread alone, that is Christ incarnated, without death and resurrection coming in. Unless we eat the flesh and drink the blood, there is no life to taste and enjoy the bread. But as yet the people are chastened by redemption, and their experience and blessings are under grace. The question of the direct access to God is not yet brought before us. The rock indeed is smitten, as it must be, to have the life water at all. But this is a figure of what is historically the evidence of Christ's death, not the figure of the access to God within the veil. It is all an earthly part of God's way, even in grace. Now, victory depends on God's blessing from on high. However, such a victory that may be in fighting the Lord's battle the entire dependence of the people, and the moment the divine blessing is present to us in this, that if Moses, who with the rod of God represented to us the authority on high, keeps not his hand lifted up, the people are beaten by their enemies. Nevertheless, Aaron, the high priest, and her purity maintains the blessing, and Israel prevails. The cause of the hidden one sincerely valiant efforts. The fact that the battle was God's battle were, though right, of no avail. All depends upon God's blessing from on high. One would have thought indeed that God made war and unfurled the banner, it would soon be over. But no, from generation to generation he would make war upon Amalek. For if it was a war of God, it was in the midst of his people.